Okay, hi there, Addie. Welcome to today's lesson. Oh, I just realized I put lesson 35 up there, and this is actually lesson 36 because we are moving right along. We are on page 146 of the book, and we are going to go over distributive property. You remember what that is, right? It's when you have like something outside of parentheses like this. Okay, and then you multiply, let's see, you multiply 4 times x and then 4 times 1, and you'd like multiply that out. That's the distributive property. But we're going to start doing it with rational expressions. And do you remember what rational expressions mean? Like it has variables in it. And they contain positive exponents, okay? And then we're going to talk about minus signs and negative exponents. So we're going to cover the whole gamut of exponents today. It's going to be so fun. I'm actually excited for this lesson. I love algebra, and today's lesson is really super fun. But first, let's have a little Far Side humor. Looks like these folks are getting on an elevator, and it looks like this guy's talking to the group, and he's saying, "Don't be alarmed, folks. He's completely harmless unless something startles him." I love the Far Side. And I think you would love it too, because it's kind of dark humor. Like, obviously something bad is about to happen here with that lion. His tail. Okay. Alrighty. Ow, I just hit my knee. Ow, I hit my knee on the desk. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. Okay, here's what we're going to start with, that distributive property that I told you about. So first of all, let's review how to multiply fractions. Okay, so here's a fraction. Here's a fraction. We're multiplying it together here. And remember what you do is you multiply the numerators straight across. So 2 times 5 is going to be 10. And then you multiply the denominators straight across. And so 3 times 7 is going to be 21. And that's going to be your answer, and then you reduce it if you can. Okay, so you know how to do that. Easy peasy. You got it, right? Now, what about variables? Here's the variables. Variables means a letter because the number value of it can vary. It can be whatever number, right? Variables stand for some unspecified real number, but all the rules for real numbers also apply to variables. So this is what is super cool, is when you have a fraction here and a fraction here, you're going to do the same thing, just pretend they're numbers. We're going to take the numerators and we're going to multiply straight across. So if we did that, if we multiplied mx times ax, what would we get? Well, we would get an a, because that's right here. We would get an m, and we would get x squared, because remember, when you have x, which is x1, times x1, you just add the exponents. X times x is x squared. Makes sense? So we just multiply these straight across. This is so cool. And then you do the same exact thing to the denominators. 4y times 2y, and you write the answer there. So in this situation, it's going to be 8. And then we're multiplying y times y, which is y squared. So this is totally the answer. That's it. That is so cool, isn't it? The reason I wrote on the top, I wrote A and then M and then X, is because I'm a little OCD and I like to write the answer in alphabetical order. But you don't have to. It would be the same answer if it was M ax squared, right? That would be a totally equivalent thing, and so it wouldn't be wrong. So if you write that as your answer and the answer book says something a little bit different, that's totally fine. All right, let's take this to the next level because we got this down. We got that part down, right? So now, what if you have an expression like this? This one's a little different because this is kind of like, remember when I wrote 4 times x minus 1, and you'd use the distributive property. So you would say 4 times x, and then you would say 4 times 1. So this is like the same thing, except the 4 would be like out here, and this would be x minus 1 or whatever, right? So we do the same thing. The first thing that we're going to do in something like this is multiply this times this. This is how we do the distributive property, right? We're turning a multiplication, a product, into a sum or addition. In this case, it's actually subtraction because there's a minus sign there, but we'll get to that in a minute. The first thing we're going to do is multiply this times this. So we do this just the same way we multiply fractions. We start with the numerator. X times A is going to be XA. I didn't write it in alphabetical order there, but it's okay. It doesn't matter. All right, now we're going to do the denominators. So it's going to be y times y, because y squared. Okay, sorry, I'm just blowing a little fuzzy off my screen. All right, so that's the first part of the answer, but this is the distributive property, so we are not done yet. The next part is that we have to multiply this times this. Okay, I put a negative sign here because it's a minus sign in this part, but you could think about it as plus a negative b and think about it that way and just multiply straight across, but whatever. All right, so, oh, the other thing that makes this a little tricky is because we're multiplying a fraction times just a single letter, right, of the single letter b. But remember that everything can be a fraction. We're just going to think about this as b over 1. All right, so let's multiply the numerator straight across. So it's going to be x times b. And so I'm going to write xb over here. Okay, now we're multiplying the denominators. So it's going to be y times 1, which is super easy. It's just y. And this is the final answer. And you can't reduce it any more than that. That's as much as it can be reduced. So that is totally the final answer. That's what it would say in the answer book. Let's do a few more examples now that you know how to do it. And as you know, the examples tend to get a little bit more complicated because we are learning new concepts here. Okay, I'm going to make this problem because it's kind of complicated. I'm going to make it a little bigger here. I'm going to give myself lots of space. All right, so I'm going to make this big. And I think I'll just like write the answer underneath like as I go, okay? So just think about it as like, this is like 4 and x minus 1. You know how to do that. It's totally easy. It's the distributive property. So the first thing that we're going to do is multiply this times this. And it's two fractions with variables. So we're going to start with the numerators. We're going to do x squared times x squared. You know how to do that. It's x to the 4th power because we are just adding the exponents. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. Okay, now let's do the denominators. Y squared times y. Well, there's 2 y's here and there's 1 y here. So how many y's are there total? There are 3 y's. So I'm going to put y to the 3rd. Okay, now I'm looking at this negative sign here. So I'm going to put a negative or a minus sign right there. Okay, I feel like I need to move this up or something so I'm not going back and forth all the time. Okay, hopefully that's not too confusing. Oh, it's still like not all on the same screen. There we go. Let's do that. Okay, now I can erase these, because now the next step of the problem is we are going to multiply this times this. And we're going to do the numerator straight across. Okay, let's start with that. So we've got an x squared here and a 3y cubed. I like to start with the numbers. So we've got a 3. How many x's do we have? We have 2. How many y's do we have? We have 3. Okay, that's what you get when you multiply this, 3 y's, this, 2 x's. You get this. Easy. All you do is add the exponents and make sure you have all the variables included and the coefficients included. You've got to have that 3. Okay, now let's multiply the denominators. So we have y squared here and we have an m right here. So I'm going to put over and then I'm going to put y squared m. Okay, now the next step is to see if we can reduce anything or simplify anything or cancel anything out. And remember, you can cancel things out in a single term if they're multiplied on the top and divided on the bottom, and you've got the same thing on the top and the bottom. Okay, check this out. We've got y's on the top and we've got y's on the bottom. So how would we cancel these out? There's 2 y's here and there's 3 y's here. So the way I think about it is there's going to be only 1 y on top. Why? That's a funny question. Because there's 3 y's there and there were 2 y's there. So basically 2 of these cancel out 2 of these. So now there's going to be no y's on the bottom and only 1 y left on the top. Or you can think about it as just like, I don't know, since you're dividing, you're subtracting the exponent. So it would be 3 minus 2, which is 1 that's left on top. I don't know. I like to think of it as there's 3 y's on top, there's 2 y's on bottom, 2 of them cancel out. That's how my brain works. So this is the final answer. So you have to simplify after you multiply it out. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Did that blow your mind? Like, look at the complicated math problems you're doing right now. This is freaking awesome. Okay, let's do example 36.2. Look how much more complicated they are getting. Did you ever think you were going to do math problems like this? This is amazing. Okay, so you've got something out here multiplied by kind of like that x minus 1. However, this is not a fraction, so I'm going to make it look like a fraction because that helps my brain do these problems. And I'm just going to put that over 1 because it doesn't matter. It's like always over 1. And then we're going to remember the steps. The steps are to multiply first and then simplify. So we're going to multiply using the distributive property. And then we're going to try and simplify things and basically try and cancel things out. So for the first part of the problem, we're going to multiply this times this. So I'm going to make a fraction line. Okay, and I'm going to look at the numerators. I've got an m, and then I've got all this stuff. Okay, so let's see. Should I put it in alphabetical order? Yeah, why not? Why not? Okay, so I'm going to do, no, I don't want to. Okay, no, I don't want to. I'm going to resist the urge. M-A-X-P. Okay, so that's the top. Now I'm going to do the denominators. Z-M-K. ZMK. All right, now that's awesome. We did that part, easy peasy. I'm going to look at this minus sign, so I'm going to put a minus sign here. Remember we're changing a product into a sum. So now we're going to do the next part, which is we're multiplying this times this. So let's do the numerator straight across. So I'm going to put that coefficient first. Whoops, so 2. We've got 2, I did that. Now let's do the m's. I've got 4 m's here and 1 m here. So that's going to be 5 m's. You basically just count all the m's. Whoops, sorry. There's 4 over here. There's 4 over here. There's 1 over here. So you just count them. There's 5 total. What about p's? There's 4 p's here. Okay, so I'm just going to put p4. Now let's do the bottom. Even though there wasn't a bottom over here, there's just a 1. So I have to remember that one and put that z on the bottom. Okay, now we did the multiplication. So first we multiply, then we simplify. Is there anything that can be canceled out? Okay, so I have to look at this term. Is there anything that's the same on the top and the bottom? Oh yeah, there is. There's an m. There's 1 m on the top and 1 m on the bottom. So that means they cancel each other out. So I can just do that. Okay, what about this term? Is there anything that cancels out? No, there's not. There's nothing that's the same on the top and the bottom. So I'm going to leave that as is, and that means that this is the final answer. Oh, sweet. This is so fun. Okay, let's do the next example. Whoa, this is getting complicated because it's not just 4 times x minus 1, it's like x minus 1 minus y, right? There's now 3 terms inside the parentheses, but that's okay. The concept is the same. So there's nothing new to learn. We're just going to multiply this out. Okay, so the first step is to multiply this times this. let's start with the numerators. AB times XAB. Okay, so AB, I'm going to put that X there first. So I've got an X. Now, how many A's do I have? I've got 1A here, 1A here. So that means I have 2 A's, A squared. How many B's do I have? I have 1B here, I have 1B here. So that means I have 2 B's, B squared. What about the bottom? Let's do the denominator. I've got a C squared, so I've got 2 C's here, 1 C here. That makes C cubed. That's cool. All right, now I'm going to go to the next term. So I'm putting this out of my head, and I'm multiplying this times the second term. Now, the second term is a fraction. It's just over 1, right? So let's start with the numerators. And it looks like we have a coefficient of 2, so I'm going to write that down. So I took care of that one. Now, how many A's do we have? We have 1A, and that's this one over here, okay? How many B's do we have? We have 1B here, 1B here. So that means we have B squared. How many X's do we have? We have just 1 X, so that goes here. Alrighty, now let's do the bottom part. There's a C squared and there's a times 1. Anything times 1 is just itself, so I'm just going to put that there. All right, I'm going to give myself room for that final term, and I can put this out of my head now. Whoops, whatever, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to multiply this times the third term. Now, the third term has a minus in front of it, so I'm going to put a minus here. Let's start with the numerators. We've got a 4, so I'm going to write down that 4. Then we have an A and a B, so 4AB. Let's do the denominators. C squared, we've got 2 C's here. We've got 2 C's here. 2 C's plus 2 C's make 4 C's, C to the 4th. All right, sweet. So this is our final expression. So we multiplied, and now we need to simplify. So I'm going to look at each individual term and see if there's anything that will cancel out. So in this first one, there's a C3 on the bottom, and I don't see any C's on the top, so nothing can cancel out there. What about this second term? Same, there's C squared on the bottom, there are no C's on top, so that can't cancel out at all. Same with this one, so basically nothing simplifies further because there's 4 C's on the bottom and there are no C's on the top, so we can't cancel anything out there. So what we're left with is this complicated looking expression, but at least it's a sum and not a multiplication product problem anymore. So there we go. We turned a product into a sum, distributive property, bam, we got this, baby. Now, I have an excellent idea. We are going to change the subject. This next part, we are going to talk about minus signs and negative exponents. Now, if you need a break, take a break because you are going to need all of your brain power for this next part of the lesson. And this is the last part of the lesson, but it's going to take a lot of brain power. Pause this and read it, and then I'm going to explain it, okay? Now, remember, when you have a minus sign in front of an expression, kind of like this, minus 4, that means the opposite of the expression. So it's not a 4, it's the opposite of 4, which is negative 4, okay? Now, if you have a negative exponent, like 4 raised to the negative 1, that is a totally different thing. It does not mean the opposite of it. A negative exponent has a meaning that's entirely different. I don't know if we've gone over this, but it means that you put it on the bottom, right? So we're going to go over some examples, and you're going to see how confusing this can get really quickly, which is why you need to pay a buttload of attention, okay? Let's start with an easy one. Let's say we have the expression 4 squared. What does this mean? This means 4 times 4. There are 2 4s, and that means 16. Okay, you got that, easy peasy, right? But this one, where you have a negative exponent, that means a totally different thing. And I think we have gone over this, but if you move the numerator to the denominator, you can change the sign. So this expression means the same as this. And what we do with that is that stays on the denominator. Okay, and so this is actually 1 over 16. Okay, I think you get that because I think that we have gone over that. But the negative exponent does not mean the opposite of this. It means that you move that to the denominator. Okay, all right, we got that. Now, this is where it gets tricky. So this is where you really need to pay attention. Now we have a minus sign in front of the 4. And this is what you're going to do with these problems. You are going to take your finger. Let's see, I need like a nice flesh colored. Okay, I'll use brown. We have like a medium brown finger. I'm gonna draw a finger. Pretend this is your finger and your fingernail, and this is your knuckle. Okay, now we take your finger and we cover that negative sign. Just kind of pretend it's not there, because that means the opposite of. So if we pretend it's not there and pretend that this is just 4 squared, we remember what that is. That's a 16. And then we move our finger away and we say, well, if that answer to that is 16, then the opposite of that is negative 16. So this is a true statement. Negative 4 raised to the 2 power is negative 16. And that makes sense to me because negative 4 raised to the 2 power means that it means the opposite of 4 times 4. And the 4 times the 4 part of it can reduce to 16. And then you've still got this opposite sign in front of it. Okay? All right, let's just remember that. Now this one is different, and this gets complicated. What I told you before to do is to put your finger over that negative sign. However, you'll notice because of the parentheses, you can't put your finger in front of it because you'd have to put your finger in front of the parentheses, and then you'd have to put your finger over this side of the parentheses. And so it just does not mean the same thing. Forget the finger in this one. In this one, the exponent means that everything inside the parentheses is squared, because whatever this exponent is next to, that's the thing that gets squared. And in this case, the exponent is next to the freaking parentheses. So that means everything inside the parentheses is going to get squared. What this means is you've got a negative 4 times a negative 4. And that would be an easy problem. You already know that negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. And there's no other negative sign that we put our finger in front of. We took that negative into account already. So the answer is positive 16. So look at this difference here. When you've got a problem like this, the answer is negative 16 because it's the opposite of 4 squared. But when you've got a problem like this, that negative 4 gets multiplied by itself, and now the answer is a positive 16. Get it? If you don't get it, text me, and we're going to practice it some more. Okay, now you can imagine how it gets really, really complicated. But let's look at this one. Negative 4 raised to the negative 2. Whew, this is starting to get complicated, right? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our finger. Let's take our finger. Let's make it a pink finger this time. I don't know why. Okay. So we've got our pink finger, and this time we can put it in front of that negative sign because there's no parentheses there, right? So you could just, this means the opposite of 4 raised to the negative 2 power. So we already did 4 to the negative 2 power, so we know how to do that. It's 1 over 4 squared, okay? And I'm just, for now, I'm ignoring that negative sign, but I know in my head that it's still there, okay? Now, 1 over 4 squared is 1 over 16, and I'm going to remember that negative sign and take my finger off of it now. And so the answer here is negative 1 over 16. or the opposite of 1 over 16. So this is the final answer. Okay. Ooh, this is crazy, isn't it? Let's do another crazy one. All right, here, check it out. You've got a negative exponent and a negative in front of the number. We can't put our finger over it because it wouldn't cover the parentheses are there. And you can't cover this parentheses and not cover this parentheses. So we have to take that negative into account. But let's start with this negative on the exponent. What do we do with that? The first thing we do is put everything on the bottom and change the sign. So now we've got this. Okay, this to me is a way easier problem, right? So this to me means 1 over, and then whatever is squared is the thing inside the parentheses because the 2 is right next to that parentheses. So on the bottom, we have -4 times -4. Now, -4 times -4, that's easy. It's going to be a positive 16. Do I need to change the answer to the opposite? No, I don't, because I already took that negative sign into account when I squared it right there. So this is the final answer for that. Oh man, if any of that is confusing, read that page in the book. It's on page 147, okay? I know sometimes it feels like, ooh, this is clear as mud, meaning it's not clear at all. But anyway, this is how math is. I don't know if this pig is cute or not cute. Like, it's kind of so ugly and gross that it's kind of cute. Anyway, Addie, that baby's totally cute though, isn't it? Oh my gosh. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Love you, Addie. Have a great time doing your math homework. Bye.